Hi everyone, today I'm going to be talking to you about news surveillance. And I thought a great way to get started would be to talk about the definition of what news surveillance is. According to Marx of the Organisation of Surveillance and Security, it's the use of technical means to extract or create personal data. But after a short amount of time researching the topic, I discovered a 22-page document discussing other definitions of news surveillance and their legitimacy. Essentially, the lines between old surveillance and new surveillance are blurred due to a person's choice in actively giving their information away rather than it being taken away from them through observation or otherwise. Here are some examples of new surveillance. Cookies are a great example of new surveillance that has been under the microscope in recent years. Cookies are small data packets that are saved when you enter a website or use an application. If you've ever entered a site and not had to re-log in, it's cookies that enable this convenient feature. Cookies are also used by third-party applications and businesses to target their advertising, which people have varying opinions on. Drones are a new form of surveillance used in areas where it may be dangerous to travel on foot, but they've posed a great security risk since their rise in the commercial world. Once they were able to be accessed and used unmonitored by everyday people, the governments worked quickly to restrict their use by making people who use drones apply for drone pilot licenses, as well as having to abide by rules such as restrictions on flying above 120 metres in the air vertically, it must be 30 metres away from other people, you can't record people without their consent, and more, including keeping a safe distance from large aircraft and emergency areas. But during my research, I came across a form of news surveillance that I had heard of but hadn't given much thought to. It's called Exif metadata, and rather than speaking confusing computer language, I've dumbed it down to understand it myself. Exif stands for Exchangeable Image File Format, and it's all the information that's stored alongside any photo you take on your devices. DSLR cameras do this as well as your mobile phone. The information that's stored generally consists of the camera's settings like focal length and white balance, and other photo information like date and time, as well as copyright information, but more importantly, your latitude and longitude. This means that unless you disable this feature manually or remove the metadata after taking the photo, you might be sharing your location without being conscious of it. Exif data began getting collected with digital images in 1995 and since then has had multiple revisions to stay up to date with modern technology. And much like other new surveillance methods, this information is potentially dangerous in the wrong hands. But with that being said, I ask you to suspend your suspicions because there's actually scenarios where this information is really, really important. If you've paid any attention to the front page of Netflix in the last year, you might have noticed a docu-series called Don't F with Cats, Hunting an Internet Killer. And now I won't be showing any gruesome images, but I will be referencing crimes and animal abuse, so this is your trigger warning. This series was an incredible documentary that followed the investigative efforts of everyday people who began stalking a killer who had been eluding police for many years. The criminal had been posting videos of himself hurting cats and eventually killing them. These videos circulated the internet in a viral sense due to the shock factor that was new to many people on the internet in 2010. Because of the lack of information in the videos, such as any faces, voices, names, and location, the police were unable to assign a physical jurisdiction and had little to no experience in investigating crimes originating over the internet, and therefore were at a loss. After seeing the success of his videos, the criminal moved on to more heinous and gruesome crimes. After abusing animals multiple times, he then decided to film himself committing murder. This enraged the group of incredibly passionate amateur investigators who had been warning the police of this eventuality. And so, after the group of international internet friends had been given a long list of names by civilians, they started going profile by profile to identify any links. Eventually, they found the profile of a large suspect and were able to use the Exif metadata left on some of his photos to create a timeline of his escapes from country to country during the 4 years that he was on the run. They used the Exif data he had left on some of his images and Google Maps to identify landmarks in Montreal and hotel room views to pinpoint his location, which meant that the jurisdiction had now been found and the police were able to eventually find him and indict him for the several charges he was guilty of. Although this was possibly the most famous case, this is not the only case where Exif data has been used to either confirm or deny a person's timeline and location in reference to crimes, and it's become a very valuable asset when in the right hands. New surveillance is often daunting and its implications are uncertain, and in this day and age of technology and the internet, we're only going to be exposed to more over time. The best way to protect yourself is to monitor what you do online. If there's a particular service, application, or website that you're uncertain of, do your research. There's plenty of well-informed people ready to help you protect yourself and your data. Thanks for watching.